This gives us something that has never before been possible in the history of humanity, a contract that is guaranteed by physics to be properly executed. Because think back to all the detailed work we've done. Once the smart contract is deployed to the blockchain, its code and its execution cannot be tampered with. Anyone who wants to run away from this agreement simply can't. Their assets are locked under the contract's control and will only be handled in the exact manner that's dictated by the smart contract's code. Hey everyone, this video is sampled from my online course which teaches you tokenomics for fundraising. You'll learn about the fundraising process, key tokenomic concepts, and get a complete spreadsheet model that you'll learn how to use by solving real-world fundraising problems. You can find the link to the full course in the description section below. And if you'd like to support this channel and help me to create more free content, please like, share, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. That's all. Now back to the video. We've said quite a lot, but in other ways we've said very little at the same time. Our account so far is being very high level and abstract. It's like me showing you screenshots of a new coding language and expecting you to grasp all the things we can build with that kind of tool. So not very helpful, I know. So let's now start digging in to look at what you can actually do with this smart contract technology. The first use case we're going to look at is the one that gives smart contracts their name, when we use them as contracting devices. Bear with me, you probably already have a good idea of what a normal contract is, so let's walk through what it actually does. A contract describes an agreement that's made between two or more parties. These parties are free to choose how they are going to behave, and the agreement records a commitment of how these parties will behave towards each other in the future. Usually these behaviors involve the exchange of something that has economic value, and often contracts describe different actions due to be taken under different circumstances or conditions. So here are some simple examples. I will pay Sophie $1,000 if she completes this market research study in 7 days. I will pay my landlord $1,000 on the first day of every month while I reside at their property. I will keep 20% of the value of every sale I make for my client's product as commission. Contracts help us in three specific ways. They help us to negotiate and enter into agreement by stating our terms in a format that helps clarify what the agreement is and what the obligations of its signing parties are. They help us keep an objective historical record of this agreement, so there can be no doubts as to what was agreed and who agreed to it after time passes. They also serve as a reference for proper execution, a reference that tells us what's supposed to happen once the events cited in the contract occur. This last point is of special interest to us. When it comes to our traditional contracts, we need a human being first to validate whether the events that trigger obligations in the contract have occurred, and then a human again to execute the actions that fulfill those obligations. The thing that makes a smart contract smart is a capability for it to be self-verifying and self-executing. That means that no humans are needed for either of these essential tasks. They happen automatically. Is that actually possible? Well, let's start off by observing that many simple contracts can be completely captured using simple, bare, logical statements. Look at these. If project delivered on today, I pay Sophie $1,000. If living in flat and day equals 1, pay landlord $1,000. If sale generated, pass 80% of sale value to client. As I'm taking pains to stress with the choice of font here, these conditions and actions can be completely described using a set of coding instructions. Sure, not every agreement we wish to make can be translated in this way, but a good many will. So let's suppose for now that our intended agreement can be coded. So how do these coded contracts compare with a conventional sort? Let's look at those three benefits we mentioned earlier. First, on negotiations. Well, the new coded contract can help us negotiate carefully as well. The code makes it brutally and unambiguously clear what the terms of the agreement are. Granted, we need to be able to read and test the code, but then again, we also rely on legal counsel for our traditional contracts to make sure that we understand all the legalese. So on a first use basis, both the traditional and the coded approach have a similar standing. But over time, the coded approach may prove superior, because over time, risk and diligence costs for that contract may fall much more rapidly. If the code is audited once or given periodic review thereafter, or if a track record of that contract's use is trustlessly and transparently recorded on a blockchain, other people can reuse that contract without the specialist help. So that's an important benefit in favor of the smart contract format. Next, let's examine the coded contract standing as a record of the agreement. Well, it's just as good, but actually, once it's on a blockchain, it's even better. Blockchain storage gives us cryptographic guarantees that the agreement was signed by its parties and its contents have not been tampered with. That's powerful. In fact, that improvement by itself constitutes a meaningful innovation. It could underpin the makings of a new kind of fully automated, fast, and decentralized legal registry. It would be impossible for a powerful authority to abuse their position to erase or tamper records of your title holdings, for example. Now, all this is very cool, but we don't yet have the makings of a true smart contract. It all comes down to this final point here. If our coded contract describes obligations that depend on conditions that can only be checked manually, or define obligations that can only be satisfied by voluntary actions taken by the parties, then these coded contracts cannot self-verify or self-execute. By definition, they are just as dumb as our conventional contracts. But now let's look at what happens if we bring in some extra assumptions. Let's suppose that we're dealing with a smart contract where all obligations arising only concern digital asset actions, and the smart contract can execute those actions by running its code, and signing parties grant exclusive control of those assets when they enter into the agreement. And finally, that the events deciding the status of the contract can be digitally communicated to it. Then we do get a true smart contract that is fully self-verifying and self-executing. And this gives us something that has never before been possible in the history of humanity. A contract that is guaranteed by physics to be properly executed. Because think back to all the detailed work we've done. Once the smart contract is deployed to the blockchain, its code and its execution cannot be tampered with. Anyone who wants to run away from this agreement simply can't. Their assets are locked under the contract's control and will only be handled in the exact manner that's dictated by the smart contract's code. Think about how profound this is. If there is an agreement that you wish to make that meets these criteria, you'll now have a method for doing so, knowing that you will never have to go to court to make or dispute a claim, wait for a ruling, or risk having to chase a non-compliant party. In technical terms, we say that such a smart contract has eliminated counterparty risk. None of these costs have to be factored or priced into the agreement because they can never occur in the first place. So let's make all of this super concrete with a simple example. We're going to compare a conventional contracting process with a smart contract alternative. Suppose that I am a freelance digital marketer and I've been engaged to improve visitor stats to my client's website. We sign a terms of engagement letter that states that I am owed an upfront payment and then a contingent bonus payment that is released to me if I at least double the amount of visitors to my client's website within 30 days. Let's focus in on how we can contract that bonus payment, starting off with the old way. First up, I call my lawyer and get them to draft up an appropriate engagement letter, paying them their fee, of course. Then myself and the client have our back and forth, double check our changes with lawyers again, probably for more fees, and then sign using a trusted e-signing intermediary, again at cost. Then, 30 days after the engagement, I check Google statistics on my client's website, and they are indeed double. But my client refuses to pay. I waste about 1 month arguing with them and then file my claim in court. I then wait 6 months for the case to be heard and an extra month for it to be decided. The court rules in my favor, but the client is internationally mobile and evades the obligations imposed by the court. Now, obviously, this wasn't a happy journey. So let's keep the outcomes of this process on the right and compare it with a smart contract approach here on the left. First, it turns out that simple smart contracts of this sort are well established at this point. They come with strong audit and long-standing public track record of good use recorded on the blockchain. So I'm happy to use this contract in an off-the-shelf kind of way, and I pay a much smaller fee than I paid for the lawyer. Next, my client agrees to place the bonus sum into a wallet controlled by the smart contract. And I provide the smart contract with a wallet address that I want to receive my payment to. Then, as before, I double the traffic to my client's website on day 30. The smart contract detects this and automatically releases the payment to my wallet. My client isn't happy, but realizes that they have to keep it to themselves now since it's only what they agreed to. You can see that lots of costs and risks of the first scenario are completely avoided here, and we have a much happier ending. So before we get carried away with our own excitement about how amazing this all is, let's take a small step back here. To get this far, I had to make some pretty important assumptions, which I want to restate here.